So welcome to the interview with Dr. Monica Vazirani of UC Davis. My name is Anne Dranowski, and sadly we cannot be together in person. So to help make the most of being together apart, I'd like to start by asking you, if you haven't done so already, and if you're able to please turn on your camera, your video. Okay, thank you. As you guys continue to do that, hello again. So I'm a postdoc here at the IAS as part of the special year on geometric and modular representation theory. And in 2 weeks, I'll be a TA for Dr. Monica Vazirani, who's going to be running a course on representation theory and combinatorics of the symmetric group and related structures as part of the IAS WAM program. For today, though, I'll just be moderating the Q&A as well as the chat. So for the Q&A, we'll be using a platform called Slido, and I'll paste the link in the chat here. The link I just posted, you can upvote the questions that are already there. You can also submit new questions in real time. And we very much encourage you to do just that as the interview goes along. So as you take a moment to pull that up on your screens, hopefully you see some of the questions that are already there. I'll just mention that if you have any issues, feel free to message me directly in the Zoom. I'll do my best to assist. Okay, so hopefully everyone sees that Q&A now. As a disclaimer, we only have a runtime of 30 minutes, not including this. This interview will not be able, therefore, to cover every single question that is submitted to the Q&A, and the questions that we do cover may not be chosen according to popularity, so you do have the option to upvote. For example, the questions that you submit as we go may not catch up in upvotes to the questions submitted yesterday or the day before, but may be more like organic to the conversation. The Zoom chat that I'll also be moderating is intended for two very different things: for technical questions and contributed answers. So, you know, if you can't hear something or some question that you have, you're free to use that for that. But also for contributed answers, we mean if you have an opinion on a topic, you're very, very welcome to chat, to chime in the chat, and also even to raise your hand if you want to chime in on the mic. After the interview, we'll invite you to continue the discussion in the IAS Gather Town, and the link and the password will be given at the end, and hopefully it'll be an opportunity to cover anything that we may have missed, including hands or questions. So thank you with that for joining again, and I'll hand it over to our moderator, Jessicainson.
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for coming. It's great to see so many faces here. My name is Jessicainson. I'm an assistant professor at Duke University and a university research fellow, Royal Society University research fellow, and assistant professor at the University of Cambridge. And this year I'm also a member at the IAS, but sadly I'm only virtually at the IAS because of the pandemic, so I couldn't make it in person, but luckily Zoom allows us to still participate in everything virtually. And so it's my great pleasure to have this, to conduct this interview with Dr. Monica Vazirani. And Dr. Vazirani is a professor at UC Davis. She received her PhD from UC Berkeley in 1999. And after that, she had an NSF postdoctoral fellowship and other postdoctoral positions at UC San Diego, UC Berkeley, MSRI, and Caltech. So I think she likes California. Her research interests center on the representation theory of algebras related to the symmetric group and how to express algebraic phenomena via the combinatorics of partitions, tableaus, crystalgraphs, and parking functions. And moreover, from her involvement in the Noetherian ring as a graduate student to her participation in this summer's IAS WAM program, Dr. Vazirani is an enthusiastic organizer and participant in activities aimed at promoting women in mathematics. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Vazirani today. So let me begin this interview by asking a question that received a lot of upvotes, and there were several questions that centered around the same topic. The question is, how do you choose research questions And more generally, what guides you in your research? And related questions are, if you choose problems that you know how to solve or that are completely open, or how do you choose research questions? It's a big question.
Okay, thank you. Before I answer, so first, thank you very much to my moderators, Anne and Jessica, and to the IIS for organizing this. And I'm really excited to see a lot of familiar faces and names, and also some faces and names that I hope are of students that I'll be meeting in 2 weeks. So yeah, so for me, choosing research problems in recent years has actually been very collaborator driven. So I think I spent time when I was younger I was working in a fairly narrow area, I was working on Hecke algebras. And luckily I built a little bit of a reputation as being an expert in that area. And luckily it's an area that's connected. Hecke algebras arise in many different places. And so someone who was working in some area of math, and they would be like, oh, this is something to do with Hecke algebras, but I'm not sure. If I happened to be around, they'd be like, let's ask Monica. And so several of my collaborations have happened in just that way, that I was in the right place at the right time, and someone had a question that fit what I was interested in, and they asked, and we figured it out together, and it was a nice answer. And then of course, once you have a good collaboration, it's nice to keep it going. If you have good, someone coined it as collaborator chemistry. It's really nice if you have the right kind of give and take and a really nice sparking of ideas together. And I also like that in the math community. I feel like when I was younger, there was more this idea that you do things on your own, you do your thesis by yourself, you solve things by yourself, you must have solo papers. And I think the math community has changed, but it's also, I think, something with age, you have the privilege after you've established your career that you can work on things, as you like. And so I think nowadays, many more papers are joint papers versus solo papers. And so I really like that. Yeah, so that's a lot of how I've chosen my problems. So I find I'm very, very lucky in that. And then another way is just, if I'm interested in an area, or learning something new or some new object, some new concept, I just work out a ton of examples, a lot by hand to get a feel for what it is. And if you work out enough examples, you hopefully start seeing some patterns, and you wonder, is this thing true? And that can lead you to some new ideas. Okay. And also I'll remind you that I'm really excited to hear other people's answers to these questions. So if you want to add your own experiences or ideas to anything I say, if you just kind of do a hand raise or say so in the chat, then Anne and Jessica can call on you. And if not, we'll move on to the next question.
Yes, thanks. These are great ideas. I think, yeah, a lot of questions. Sometimes people also say the questions find you and not you find the questions. So I think that was a good example. There's another question that had a lot of upvotes, which is, why did you choose to become a professor of mathematics?
Okay. So I feel like my path to mathematics was a little random, and there was and there was some luck involved. So as a kid, I was pretty good in math, although I remember multiplication was really confusing, and I was good with addition. And the reason why multiplication was really confusing is because my older sister tried to explain it to me. And so, maybe I was, 6 and she was 8 or something like that. Not the best teacher. I don't remember how old we were, but I was, what? And so for a long time, I was actually scared of multiplication. And then I had a good teacher, and they make you do it in school. And once I finally got it, I was like, oh, this is great. This is fun. And I think that was also a good lesson. I felt like that the first time I saw the p-adic integers, I was like, what? And I stayed away from them for a really long time. So it's like, they were really confusing. And I just wasn't ready for it, or the way it was explained to me didn't resonate. And then later on, I saw it from a different approach, and I was like, these are great. So I think that can happen a lot. There can be a lot of things in math that you think you don't understand or you think you don't like. And if you give it another chance, it can be great. And so, yeah, I did like contest math as a kid. I love, you get a trophy or a ribbon. That's a great thing for a kid. really, really exciting. If they had given more trophies in chemistry, maybe I would be a chemist now. And basically when I got to college, they said, pick a major. And it was pretty random that I chose math as compared to, say, chemistry or physics or computer science. It was, physics was at 8 a.m. Math was at 10. That was one big piece of it. And I just sort of, picked math. It could have really easily been something else. Then once I kept doing math, I liked it. I liked the community. It was, it was interesting. It was hard. And then I just kind of kept doing it till I hit barriers. Like I didn't know I would become a math professor. I was like, okay, well, I'm a math major. I'll take math classes. And then someone came along and was like, you should take the GREs or you should apply to grad school. And I was like, I should, okay. And that's what everyone else seemed to be doing. So I did. And if I didn't get into any grad school, then I had like a plan B. Okay, I would go do something else. And then I didn't know if I would get my PhD or not. There were many times I doubted that. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to apply for jobs. And I was like, well, very likely I won't get a job. So I can go work in a cafe. If I don't, or, I had all these other plan B, well, I'll try. And if it doesn't work, I'll go do something else. And I was lucky that, at each step where I was like, well, if this doesn't work, I'll go do something else. Luckily, the next step opened forward and it was in math and, as a, postdoc tenure track job and so on. So yeah, who knows what I would be doing now if different barriers had come in my way. And it's kind of, I think having a plan B there and that kind of exit strategy it's always nice to have. I think it's always kind of comforting. It alleviates some of the pressure. But I feel very lucky that I get to keep doing math.
Yeah, we are very lucky that you're doing math as well, so that we have you here. So you said that you weren't sure at some point if you get a PhD. There's a related question. What was your experience finding an advisor like?
Yeah, so that was one of these possible barrier moments, actually. So I was taking classes, various of my professors I liked, and I hear, okay, what you do is you go up and you ask someone, be my advisor. And so I did that and he said no. And I was like, oh. So I went to a different professor whose class I took or I knew was working in an area I was interested in. And I said, oh, will you be my advisor? He said, no. And so this happened a couple more times, actually. And so I was like, oh, I didn't know what to do. I thought, I guess, okay, I guess I'm going to leave math. I didn't know what to do at that point. And I was very lucky that I think there was the joint math meetings maybe were in San Francisco then. And I went to him and I saw a mentor. We had a dinner. It was like a reunion of a summer math program. So it wasn't exactly the IIS WAM program, but something very similar to that. And it was for women. And I went to dinner and everybody was telling what they were doing and what they were up to. And then someone asked me, like, what about you? And I told this story. I was a little embarrassed. I almost didn't say it. And I'm so lucky that I said that because someone there who was a professor and a really amazing mentor to me, it was Lynn Butler, actually. Who was at Haverford. I know Liz knows her. She just asked me, she's like, well, okay, you asked all these different people, but who do you really want to work with? Who did you like the best and why? And I said, and they were like, hey, well, did they just say no? Or did they say why they said no? And I was like, oh, they said why. And I told them the reasons. And she's like, well, let's get counter arguments to that. And so I was like, oh. And so we talked about, all the different great reasons why this person should take me as a student. And then I went back and I made an appointment and you said you couldn't take me as a student because of blah, 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 but here's the reason why that's not a barrier. And, here's the reason why this is okay. And, one of the reasons, he kind of just switched fields. He didn't have a good problem for me and had just taken on a whole bunch of other students. And I was like, well, I'll find my own question then. You don't have to do that. And yes, you have lots of students. It's okay. I'll come to the meetings with you. I won't be extra time. I gave various arguments for why all the misgivings he had just wouldn't be an issue. And then he said yes. And so that was like a great triumph. And I wouldn't have had the confidence to do that. And it wouldn't have occurred to me to do that if I didn't have the advice of someone senior who was supporting me. So that's, one person can make a huge difference in someone's trajectory. And that's part of why I like being involved in mentorship programs. I like meeting younger mathematicians and talking to them about what they're doing. And I think it's really important for the community to be supporting everyone in math, but I guess I particularly resonate with supporting young women to succeed.
Yeah, wow. Thank you very much. I think that's a very impressive story, and it shows how important mentors are. And yeah, in particular for women, as some sadly studies show that women have less mentors. I'm really glad you found that person and that you went there and actually found a PhD advisor. We just had a question coming in that's a bit related. Do you think that opportunities and obstacles for women in mathematics have changed since the time you were in graduate school? And if so, how have they changed?
Oh, that's a great question. And this is a great one if other people in the audience also want to raise their hand or chime in. I invite that. So yeah, I think opportunities have changed in some ways. I mean, for everybody who's a bit younger, I feel like there's more conferences now, and I see more grad students going to conferences. And a lot of that is because the internet and communication. And of course, now with Zoom, it's really easy to go to conferences anywhere. You don't have to be invited. You just need the link. You don't have to travel. Just need that. But I feel like having younger mathematicians and students involved in conferences is happening much more now than when I was a student. When I was a student, I was like, how do you even know there's a conference happening? How do you get invited to these things? Where are they? It was, it was this thing that on the other side of it. It's just this other world. And actually, there I was very lucky. Again, it was a mentor who I was just talking to at a conference about his papers, and he was kind, and he told me a lot of math and gave me a lot of his time. And he's like, "Oh, will I see you in a few months at this conference in Virginia?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, I'll get you on the mailing list." But otherwise, it was invisible to me that these happened. And then obstacles changing. And sorry, I should say, and other opportunities. I think, the community is aware that the numbers of women in math can be dismally low, and hasn't, even though we've been aware of these numbers for 20, 30 years and caring about them, I think the numbers are still very low. But I think, people are aware, people do put money towards programs like the IAS-WAM program or AWM travel grants. There are definitely ways out there that are meant to support women. There's many programs that arise. So I think that the culture is very much supporting of women, has helped. So I do think there are more opportunities, but it's confusing to find them all also. And then obstacles, have the obstacles changed? That's a good question. I think people are trying to remove some of those obstacles just by making the community friendlier. But yeah, I'd be curious to see if I invite other people to comment on this.
Yeah, so everyone is welcome to share the thoughts in the chat, or if you want to speak up, just raise your hand. And I think Anne will keep an eye on that. These answers were already very helpful. I think, yeah, things are improving, but we still have a long way to go. A lot of work still needs to be done. So you mentioned networking is one of the important things. You should go to conferences, network, very important. There's a question, what is your advice for junior women starting as assistant professors? So the next step after postdoc. You have any advice?
I do have some advice. One thing I was thinking of is to do something like organize a conference. it could be an AMS sectional, it could be something through AIM, it could be a birthday conference for someone. I think if you get out there and do that, okay, yes, it's a drain on your time, but you get to invite all of the great people that get invited to conferences. And that means you get to interact with those people. And a lot of those people remember that. And when they're organizing a conference, they're going to remember, oh, you organized this great conference and you invited me. Your name will rise sort of to maybe not to the top, but rise, there to also get invited. And it increases your visibility. And also, so I think, how do you get invited to give seminars and to give talks? You can try to invite yourself, but, how do you get invited? You make yourself visible. And then, once you do get invited, when you're younger, you shouldn't say no. So I remember there was a conference I was going to, and I was just going to go. And as a participant, and then 9/11 happened. And so air travel was disrupted, and everything was chaotic, and a bunch of people canceled to go to this conference. And lucky for me, the organizers knew I had said, oh, is it okay if I just come and participate? It's near where my sister lives and so on. And they knew I was coming, and I had all of these speakers just cancel. And they were like, oh, would you speak? And, I remember freaking out to a friend of mine, because I think I was a new postdoc then actually. And I was like, oh, it's so intimidating, this conference, XYZ were supposed to speak, and I can't speak at that level. And they were like, of course you have to speak. You can't turn down this invitation. You have to say yes. You can't let your fear, you can't let yourself tell, imposter syndrome and saying, I'm not good enough. Like, get rid of that. You have to say yes because you've been invited. And if you say no, you might not get invited again by this person. Like, even if when you say no, you say, oh, but invite me again. Somehow, if you say no, that just might take you off of their radar. And so you have to say yes to these invitations, even if you're scared, or even if you do have to travel far. I think, when you're younger, you should say yes to most things if you can. I know travel can be difficult, especially when you're younger and have, say, family responsibilities. But then, so it's really important. So both these things, organizing conferences and attending when you're invited, when you're younger, it's so important to do that, because that makes you visible in the community. And that's really important for launching your career. For, people are going to be, it's not just enough that your papers are out there, right? They have to read them or be interested in them or know that they exist. And this is how you get the word out about that. And, you're going to need letters for when you go up for a tenure. And there's this idea of arm's length that, when you apply for jobs or grad school, initially, they're the people who know you, like your advisor, the people that you're really connected with. But when you go farther up, they want to have letters from people who you don't talk to regularly, someone who's a little bit from the outside looking in. And how are those people supposed to know who you are? Again, yes, of course, your papers can do that, but I really feel like the visibility is important. Oh, I see a hand up.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. Margaret would like to add something. Please go ahead.
Monica, so sweet to see you. So I want to say this idea about getting out there and giving talks, that is so important. And I have to say, I've learned going through my career, people don't read papers. You sort of figure this out after a while, or it's very unusual to meet people that really do take reading seriously, and they're, every week they think about reading papers and reading the papers on the archive. So it's really important to give talks, because it's kind of like, the infomercial. It gets people interested in reading your papers. So thank you for.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for adding this. I think everyone gets the message, hopefully. Go out there, give talks, present your results, network, meet people. a very related question that got a lot of upvotes, Monica, is the following. Is there something you wish you had known when you were a student slash postdoc slash tenure track faculty that you didn't know back then?
Well, I mean, having a crystal ball that said, yes, you actually will get a position so you can relax a little bit would have been nice to know. I do wish, some of me wishes I had had a little bit more fun in my 20s. Not that I'm a party girl, but, I was very like, I don't have time to go grocery shopping. I must do this. And, there was time to take care of myself a little better. And it might have helped a bit, but part of me is like, well, but what if I could send that message back to myself and I relaxed a little too much and didn't solve certain questions and didn't learn as much as I learned to get where I am, then I would say, well, it wouldn't have been worth it. A lot of people would say, relax, go out and have more fun. Come see a movie with me. And I'd be like, no, I want to work. And I enjoyed working. So I think, a lot of that was actually the right thing to do. But I could have been a little bit more relaxed on the way, I think. And then my other advice, let's see, or what else would I have wanted to know? I think, yeah, I think that's, other than if I could have also just said the solution to some great problem that's solved now. I told myself back then. That would be great. I always
think you wish you had known earlier all the solutions for the problems you're working on.
That's right.
That's a great answer, yeah. So you already kind of answered partially the question that received a lot of upvotes about maintaining a balanced career and personal life. So let me not ask this again, because I think that's a very excellent question for all of us to discuss afterwards on GatherTown, because I think it's very important to get a lot of different views on that question. Let's see, I think I have about a minute left. So sorry for all the questions that we couldn't ask. As we said, we invite you to GatherTown so that we can discuss all these questions. Also questions, how did the pandemic affect us, which I think are questions very important to discuss among all of us because we have very different experiences. But I'd like to finish on a much nicer topic. So you said that there were so many alternatives, ways you could have taken. You could have worked for Google or all the alternatives that are out there. I mean, definitely many great options are out there. So why did you choose to still be a mathematician in academia after all?
Yeah, I like that question because I feel like early on it was random, but now I really have a choice. It's a choice of whether to stay or not, or to go, try something else, or ask, Google or Apple if they would hire me or not. And I love the lifestyle. I like the autonomy. Okay, yes, there's a chair and a dean and so on, but I'm really my own boss. I really organize my time day to day, pretty much how I want, subject to, whatever hours I'm teaching at and the, occasional meetings and stuff. I really like that. It suits my personality. And, I love doing math. And yes, I might also have enjoyed some other academic pursuit, but I like the challenge. I like that I'm always having to struggle. And you get little triumphs when you get past that struggling. But I like the idea that it's keeping my brain active. And I love being surrounded by smart people. My colleague, and so many mathematicians are so nice also, but smart and interesting, and students. I love that there's always a new generation of students coming up, and I get to learn from them and see what life is like for them. Like, I have no idea, below college age, I have no idea what's in kids' heads, but at least the college age, learning what's important to them, what's the new technology, what's the new perspective of how you're seeing the world, which is, it's a wider and wider gap the older you get. So I love that. And I love that I'm always learning something. I think it's a really wonderful thing to do. I feel, sad that so much of the population, in whatever their jobs are, and they're just doing everything, they're not spending a lot of their time learning new things, as far as I can tell. And what a shame, because it's, one of the great joys in life.
Thank you very much, Monica. Let's all thank Monica for this awesome interview. Thank you, and thank you everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you to Anne and Jessica.
And so on this wonderful note that you said you love mathematics because you love the community, we would like to invite everyone to join us for further discussions on GatherTown, and I hand over to Anne for more details. You're muted.
Sorry, as I dig up the link. So I'll paste the link in a moment. But just to note, there's a bit of like a lag. You guys have to choose a little avatar, so don't, well, give it a minute before other people join. Okay, here is the link to our GatherTown, and the password is math-t.
And I think the task is to answer all the questions that stayed unanswered so far.
Yeah, and if you want continue to add to the Q&A, if that's like a more comfortable medium for you, then we'll have that open during the gather. So thanks everyone.
And